Assalamu alaikum. We were discussing secure socket layer in our previous lecture, and I mentioned that secure socket layer is a protocol which is inbuilt into many browsers, and using SSL we can enter into encryption based transaction. We can exchange information in an encrypted format with the server side, and in case I type a URL which starts with HTTPS, that would mean that I am going to be connected to an SSL enabled server, which means that both the client and the server side, they would exchange encrypted information. So I can give you a practical example. Assume that you access a web form, you make an HTTPS request, and you want to download a web form. What happens is that, first of all, there would be SSL handshake between the client side and the server side when after writing this URL you press enter. Okay. So during the SSL handshake, the hello messages, they are exchanged between the client and the server side, and during such exchange of messages, the client and server side, they negotiate upon the strongest possible cryptographic algorithm, the protocols for communication, the authentication methods which are common between the client and the server side. They negotiate upon the cipher suite, which is a combination of cryptographic algorithms and authentication methods. They negotiate upon that cipher suite, and then they come to an agreement that, well, we'll use this cipher suite for our particular session, for our particular transaction. Okay, when that request for a web form is made to an SSL enabled server after the SSL handshake is accomplished, is complete, then the web form is downloaded on the client's machine, and during the transmission of that web form from the server side to the client side, the information would be in an encrypted format. So in case anybody intercepts this information, you would still not be able to make any sense. On receiving this web form, the client would enter the information in the text boxes which are appearing on that web form, and once the customer, the client, enters the submit button, all this information which he inserted on that web form, at that point, all that information would automatically be encrypted with that symmetric key, that session key, which is in common between the client and the server. And then, in this encrypted fashion, the information printed by the client in the web form, that would travel over the internet, and in case anybody intercepts, still it would be meaningless for that hacker, for that interceptor. So we use this concept of SSL for providing our sensitive financial information. So therefore, in the web form, if there is a text box in which the customer has to type his credit card number, then automatically after clicking the submit button, this credit card number would be encrypted, and in this fashion you can safeguard your credit card number. You can prevent your credit card number to be known to the attackers, to the persons you don't want them to know. So on the server side, when this information printed in the web form, when this information is received on the server side, it gets decrypted automatically on the server side with the help of the same session or symmetric key. This process happens transparently, in fact. Okay. So For a particular session, the same symmetric key or the session key is used between the client and the server side. In case the session terminates and the client again enters into a session, then a different session or symmetric key would have to be utilized, generated for that new session. A particular key, symmetric key, is for that session in which that key is going to be used. Just in case the merchant side wants the information contained in the web form to be signed by the client also, then that is also doable. So the hash function by the client, by the customer, can be applied on that information in the web form, and hence that would generate a message digest. By inserting the private key of the customer, the client, a digital signature can come into existence which can be attached to that information in the web form. We can say that the customer, the client, has digitally signed this web form, and then this digitally signed web form is delivered on the server side. Normally the merchants, they are not interested, they are not bothered about this fact that the client should sign digitally the information they provide for payment purposes, but in case that is desired, then that is doable also. So as I mentioned, this protocol SSL can be very conveniently used for making payments through the credit card, through the debit card, because you just type your credit card number in a text box and you can expect that this information would travel in an encrypted form, and that would therefore be protected from the knowledge of the unauthorized people. There is a drawback in SSL that I would like to point out here, and this drawback is that your sensitive financial information, your credit card number, that is transmitted to the merchant side, to the server side, and maybe there is some databases which the merchant has placed, and in those databases this credit card number, this information is then stored. So there is a possibility that some unauthorized person might access that database and can retrieve, can find out this sensitive information, these credit card numbers of various customers, various clients of the merchant, and then this information, the credit card numbers, can be misused by that unauthorized person. So ideally, you do not want that your credit card number, your financial information is available with the merchant. Okay, the merchant just wants to have his payment, and the merchant is not required to know the payment details, the mechanism through which the payment is going to be made, the credit card number for that matter. So that was the primary reason why the experts then thought of another payment mechanism in which the sensitive financial information, the credit card number, that is not stored with the merchant. Rather, that information is available, that is provided to a more reliable, a trustworthy institution like a bank, the bank of the merchant. And similarly, it is also desirable that the order information, whatever the customer purchases from the merchant, that information is also not made viewable to the bank. The bank's job is only to arrange the payment. The bank is not supposed to know what order have you placed. So that basic concept was used to develop a new protocol in 1997, and that is called SET, or Secure Electronic Transaction. SET was developed by the collaboration of 4 giants, that is the Microsoft, Netscape, Visa, and MasterCard. So these 4 organizations, they work hand in hand to develop this protocol. In case of SET, a special software is required to be installed both on the customer side, and a special software has to be present on the merchant side also. Right? So it is not simple to apply as is the case with SSL. You need to have special softwares in place on both the sides in order to enter into SET-based transactions. Again, SET uses the credit card or the debit card, most cases the credit card, for making payment to the merchant. In a typical SET transaction, there are 4 entities involved. And these are the buyer, the customer, the merchant, the certification authority, and the payment gateway. So these 4 entities, they are on the internet. Payment gateway is a new term. I'll just explain what does it stand for. Both the customer and the merchant, they need to have digital certificate from certain certification authorities which would authenticate their respective public keys and through which their digital signatures can be verified. Payment gateway, in fact, is an organization whose job is to connect the entities on the internet with those which are off the internet or which are not on the internet. In other words, we can say that payment gateway acts as a bridge to connect the entities on the internet with those which are not on the internet. So it does a service, the payment gateway then draws its commission also on the basis of per transaction. To elaborate the concept, I can show you a slide. Okay, you can notice the payer, the customer, in other words, the payee, the merchant, the certification authority, and the payment gateway, they are all present on the internet. They are available on the internet. They can interact with each other through internet. And then this payment gateway is also a part of the private network of banks, which is off the internet, right? What happens is that this payment gateway collects the information from payer, the payee, through the internet, and then since it is also a part of the electronic network of the banks, which is off the internet, therefore it spreads this received information on that electronic network which is off the internet, right? So therefore the payment gateway can interact with the acquirer bank of the internet, and it can provide it information that it receives from the payer, the payee, through the internet. And similarly, the acquirer bank can also pass on information to the payment gateway. In other words, the payment gateway acts as a bridge. At the bottom, you can see there is the payer's bank, which has issued the credit card to the payer. And then on the right, the acquirer bank, the bank of the merchant, in which the account of the merchant is held. Both the payer bank and the acquirer bank, they are linked with each other through a centralized system, that is automated clearing house, and the automated clearing house enables the transfer of money, the transfer of payment from the payer's bank to the acquirer bank where the account of the merchant is lying. So as I mentioned that in order to avail the benefits of SET, both the customer side and the server side, they should be equipped with special softwares. These softwares are developed by specific vendors, and there is a company called Setco. That company has specially been formed in order to watch that the set-based softwares which are manufactured, which are prepared by the vendors, they meet the required specifications of set. Right? So it acts as a watchdog. It implements the specifications which are outlined for set. Then Setco also has another role. It acts as a certification authority as well. In fact, it can act as a root certification authority. It sits at the top of the hierarchy of certification authorities. Right? So I can show you a slide here just to make more sense for you. So notice in this slide that Setco is at the top of the hierarchy because it is the root CA. It can issue digital certificates to the card brand, say Visa or MasterCard, the organization which has the card in its name, the credit card. And it can also issue digital certificates to the credit card issuer banks. As you can see, the hierarchy. And then the card brand can further issue digital certificate in this setup to the merchant. So for the merchant, the first certification authority would be the card brand. The card brand, that organization, Visa, MasterCard, etc., that would act as a certification authority, issuing digital certificate to the merchant and through that authenticating the public key of the merchant. Similarly, the credit card issuer bank would act as the first certification authority for the customer, providing the digital certificate to the customer and thereby confirming the public key of the customer. Here I want to talk about a very basic concept which is associated with the set, and that is dual signatures. Okay? This concept means that in set, the financial information, the credit card number would be hidden from the merchant and the order information would be kept hidden from the bank. Okay, and that concept is called dual signatures. We implement dual signature concept through set, and there is a particular mechanism, there is a particular technique. I'll just illustrate how we can create dual signatures using set. Okay, so again I repeat this concept. It is quite critical to understand here that in set, the credit card number would not be revealed to the merchant. It would rather be revealed to the acquirer bank, the bank of the merchant, and the order information would not be revealed to the acquirer bank. Rather, the order information would be available to the merchant from whom the items are being purchased. There is a special message digest which is used to implement dual signature, and that is called dual signature message digest, represented as DSMD. We get this DSMD by, first of all, combining the message digest that we receive from the order information with the message digest that we receive from the account information. So we add up, we concatenate these two message digests, and by applying the hash function on the combination of these two message digests, we as a result get a dual signature message digest. And you will have understanding about it in the example I'm going to illustrate now. So you can look at the slide now. First of all, I would like to warn you that don't feel afraid, don't get intimidated by this slide. This concept is quite simple. You can very well understand it, believe me. Now, see, there are three entities: buyer or the bidder, merchant or auction house, and then at the bottom the acquirer bank. For simplicity's sake, I have not shown the payment gateway. You can assume that payment gateway acts as a bridge between different entities. So I have directly shown the acquirer bank here, which processes the information in this setup. Okay, first of all, the buyer or the bidder would go to the merchant's or auction house's website and make selection for certain items that he wants to send offer for or buy them. The total information which is to be provided by the buyer or the bidder consists of the order information and the account information. Now, the order information includes whatever items you want to purchase, that is the description of those items, and the account information mainly consists of the credit card number through which the payment would be made to the merchant. So, the total information, order information and the account information at the first step would be split on the buyer side. So notice that 1B, the step number 1B, that pertains to the order information and which is forwarded to the merchant or to the auction house. See the first bullet point: encrypted message includes amount offered on the item but no account information. This means that the bidder would prepare a message that these items he wants to send offer for, and this is the amount he would offer for such items. Then that information would be encrypted with the public key of the merchant or the auction house. And then the bullet point number 2, that is MD1 encrypted with bidder's private key. This order information which was encrypted, on that order information the hash function would be applied by the bidder and he would get a message digest. We call that MD1. The bidder would insert his private key in this MD1 and that would result into a digital signature. Both these two pieces of information, the encrypted information about the order which is to be placed by the bidder, plus the MD1 encrypted with the bidder's private key, that information is delivered to the merchant or the auction house. In step number 2, the auction house would decrypt the message with auction house's private key and thereby it would find that, well, the bidder has offered for such and such items at these particular prices. Then the merchant would decrypt MD1 by applying the sender, the bidder's public key, and would thereby reveal the MD1, and then the merchant or the auction house would decide whether to accept this bid or not, whether these amounts which are quoted by the bidder, they are acceptable to the auction house or not. If they are acceptable, then in step number 3, a covering letter would be created by the auction house confirming that this offer is acceptable to the auction house. So you can see the bullet point in step number 3, encrypted message that offer is accepted from bidder. This covering letter would be encrypted by the public key of the acquirer bank so that the acquirer bank, using its corresponding private key, can decrypt the same. Then the next bullet point, the MD1 which the auction house had revealed by applying the public key of the bidder. In this MD1 now, the auction house would insert its private key and thus creating a digital signature. Information contained in step number 3 would then be delivered to the acquirer bank. Now see at the top, step number 1A, here encrypted message authorizing payment to the auction house if offer is accepted, but no details about what item is bought. This step means that the account information, the credit card number of the buyer or the bidder in text form, that would be encrypted with the public key of the acquirer bank. So in this second bullet point, the MD2 note here relates to the account information, the credit card number. When you apply hash function on the account information, the message digest you get is termed here as MD2. And then DSMD, dual signature message digest. You remember when we concatenate MD1 and MD2 and apply a hash, we get a dual signature message digest, a third number, we call that dual signature message digest. So in this second bullet point, the MD2 and DSMD, they are both encrypted with the bidder, with the buyer's private key, thus creating digital signatures. So the information from this step number 1A via the buyer, the bidder, is also supplied to the acquirer bank. Now let's see in step number 4, what information has acquirer bank as a result received. Bullet point number 1, decrypt account information with acquirer private key. The information coming from the buyer, the bidder, the credit card number, the account information, that is decrypted with the help of the acquirer's private key. Remember that information was encrypted with the public key of the acquirer. So the acquirer bank, using its corresponding private key, decrypted the credit card number. Now it knows the credit card number, the account information. Subsequent bullet point, decrypt offer acceptance message with acquirer's private key. Now the first bullet point in step number 3, where the auction house had accepted the offer of the bidder and had created a covering letter encrypted with the acquirer's public key, that information was provided to the acquirer bank. Now the acquirer bank, using its own private key, would decrypt this acceptance message from the auction house, from the merchant. Then in the subsequent bullet point, decrypt MD2 and DSMD with bidder's public key. Remember that MD2 and DSMD in step number 1A, that information was encrypted with the private key of the bidder. So using bidder's public key, the acquirer bank would decrypt the MD2 and DSMD. Next, the acquirer would decrypt MD1 from step number 3 with auction house's public key. In step number 3, the MD1 was encrypted with auction house's private key. So using auction house's public key, the acquirer would decrypt MD1. Then the acquirer concatenates or adds up these two MDs, that is MD1 and the MD2, and then recompute dual signature and verify against DSMD sent by bidder. That means that after concatenating MD1 and MD2, the hash function would be applied by the acquirer bank and it would get a new message digest. If that new message digest matches with the dual signature message digest sent in step number 1A by the buyer or the bidder, that would mean that a particular account information is related to a particular order information which was created in the step number 1. And at the same time, we have also ensured that the merchant does not get the credit card number, the account information. The merchant only gets the order information, and also the acquirer bank just gets the account information, the credit card number, and does not get the description of the order which was placed by the buyer. So just apply your mind on this diagram and you will be able to make sense. In fact, what happens is that the acquirer bank gets 4 main things at the end which are to be processed to complete the transaction. And I have listed these 4 things just for simplicity's sake on a slide before you. So you can see on the screen, from the merchant, the acquirer bank gets MD1. So MD1, which relates to the order information, that information is obtained from the auction house, and using the public key of the auction house, this MD1 is decrypted by the acquirer bank. Then 3 things, they come from step number 1A through the buyer, through the bidder. And these 3 things are account information in encrypted form, that is the credit card number which was encrypted with the public key of the acquirer, and using acquirer bank's private key, that credit card number is decrypted by the acquirer. Then MD2, which relates to the account information when we apply the hash function on the credit card number information, etc. We get a message digest, we here call it MD2. So this MD2 signed with the private key of the buyer or the bidder would also be provided to the acquirer bank. The acquirer bank would use the public key of the bidder to verify this MD2, to get this MD2 to reveal it. And similarly, DSMD, dual signature message digest, which is a combination of MD1 and MD2. When we, in the first step, when we add up the 2 MDs, MD1 and MD2, and apply a hash, we get a third number, we call that DSMD. And in that DSMD, the bidder would again insert its private key, and then using the public key of the bidder, the acquirer bank would reveal this DSMD. Now, the acquirer bank concatenates the MD1 and MD2 which are available with it. Then it applies a hash function and it gets a message digest. If that message digest is the same as is the DSMD which was provided to it by the bidder, then that would mean that a particular order information is related to an exclusive, to a particular account information. And at the same time, we have also ensured that the account information does not go to the merchant, and the order information, for the privacy's sake, does not go to the acquirer bank. And then the acquirer bank can, through the automated clearing house, can interact with the credit card issuer bank, and ultimately the amount, the payment is transferred to the account of the merchant. That was the concept, how do we implement dual signatures using SET. SET is no doubt a complicated transaction as compared to SSL. So I can show you a slide in which I have listed some differences between SSL and SET. You can look at the slide. First, SSL only handles secure transmission of credit card number, but SET is designed to handle the whole transaction in a secured manner using the dual signatures. So that in fact means that in case of SET, we can also make an arrangement that the order information, for privacy's sake, is not revealed to the bank. The bank has nothing to do about what we purchase from the merchant. So in this way, we can say the whole transaction in SET is handled in a secured manner. Second point is that SSL is a general purpose protocol built into the browser, whereas SET requires software on both the client and the merchant side. I've already explained that you need to have special softwares which are authenticated by the company SetCo, and these softwares enable set transaction. You need to have these softwares on both the client and the merchant side. Point number 3, Set uses a hierarchy of certificates for authentication. So I showed you that hierarchy of certificates. So there is a root CA, SetCo acts as a root CA, then the card brand is also a certification authority in this setup, and the credit card issuer bank can also act as a certification authority. It can result into a hierarchy of certification authorities. On the other hand, that type of hierarchy is missing in case of SSL. Set is complex and distribution of certificates is sometimes not stable. You may have realized that SSL is a more complicated transaction, and it is possible that the chain of certificates in Set is not confirmed. It is the distribution of certificates is not that proper, not that stable. Set increases transaction cost. Since in case of Set, you need to have special softwares which would cost you some money, so therefore Set is a relatively costly thing. It increases the cost of transaction. Next point is that Set transactions are slower than SSL because you need to implement the dual signature concept in Set, and there are a number of steps which are required in order to complete a Set transaction. Therefore, the Set transactions are comparatively slow as compared to SSL. And then next point is that Set uses a payment gateway for secure transmission of information. Again, you can visualize that the concept of payment gateway that is missing in case of SSL. The presence of payment gateway is only there in relation to particular Set transactions. So these are some of the major differences between SSL and Set. SSL is still a popular option for making payments through credit cards, but Set on the other hand is more effective in case we want to protect the privacy, we want to safeguard our credit card numbers, our financial information in a more efficient manner, but at the same time we have to incur the cost of Set softwares, and Set is complicated to operate, to understand. Okay, with this discussion, I think our main topic that related to the different payment models used for making payment through the internet, that major topic is accomplished at this juncture. And then I would proceed with the definition of e-businesses and the advantages, disadvantages of e-businesses. Then I would like to take you through different e-business models, and then we can further study the internet marketing and stuff like that. So at this point, you can say that we have completed our one major component of this course, which is the technology side of electronic commerce, and what we are now going to start basically is the business side of electronic commerce. So we start with the definition of an e-business. An e-business is defined to be any organization, any business which is present online, which is there on the web, and it is doing e-commerce. This is probably the simplest of the definitions of an e-business. The model of an e-business is basically dependent upon the policy of that business, the operations, the technology, the ideology of that particular online business. So when I say technology, I mean that what type of particular technology is being utilized for a particular online business, whether a shopping cart technology is being used or not, some other technology is being utilized. And similarly, what payment mechanism has been adopted by a particular e-business, whether the payment is to be made through electronic checks or through e-cash or through SSL, etc. So all these different things, the vision, mission of an online business, that would also be a factor. All these different features, they would basically define the e-business model. Here I want to discuss with you as to what are the different advantages of an online business as compared to a traditional offline business. It's quite a simple thing. I can show you a slide in this behalf in which I have listed some of the advantages. So first of all, an e-business can provide personalized service. What does that mean? You are familiar with 4 P's in marketing, in traditional marketing. These 4 P's are product, price, place, and promotion. E-commerce has added a 5th P in the earlier list of 4 P's. And that 5th P is personalization, right? So you are familiar with the concept of cookies, for that matter, how using cookies the customer can be tracked online and we can find out, we can trace what is the buying pattern of that customer, and then after studying his buying pattern, his needs, his inclination, we can then serve the customer on a personalized basis. So that aspect is missing in case of offline businesses. You can conveniently study the needs of the customer, and studying the needs of the customer, you can then serve your customer in a more personalized manner. Okay, next, high quality customer service. Again, an advantage of an online business is that it can provide a very quality service to the customers as compared to the offline businesses, because the nature of the technology, the internet technology, is such that we can afford to store the information about the customers in the databases. So we can record the biodata of our customers, we can record the buying pattern of our customers. All this information can be stored in our databases, and then we can analyze the buying pattern of our customer, and then we can serve them accordingly. Besides, the nature of the technology also enables us to receive the immediate feedback of our customers. So the customers through, say, emails can interact with the online business and tell the online business about any complaints, about any problems that they are facing in dealing with the online business. And in light of that feedback, then an online business can easily modify its plan. It can serve the customers in a more efficient manner. It can eliminate the complaints recorded by the customers. Third is no inventory cost. Again, it's a very useful advantage. Say in case of electronic commerce, in case of online businesses, you can afford to eliminate the inventory costs. So in fact, you are not supposed to have your own building. You are not required to hire much staff that would be working in that building. You are not supposed to bear all the overhead costs which are associated otherwise with offline businesses. In case you are starting your online business, the main thing you need to have is that you prepare your website and you market your website efficiently, properly, so that people come to your website and then they can do the buying from your website. So you can afford to play the role of a middleman, an intermediary, and you would not incur in that fashion the inventory costs, the overheads which are associated otherwise with the offline businesses. There are many organizations, many companies which have capitalized upon this useful feature, and they have chosen to act as middlemen. What they did, they created nice looking websites, they marketed their websites properly, and they would receive the orders from the customers, and they would implement such orders from the traditional markets. They would not have their own warehouses, they would not stock any inventory there. Rather, they would receive the orders and they would find out who are the people in the market, what are the companies in the market which can satisfy these orders, and they would then establish contact with those market players, get the items, get the things from those traditional shops, physical shops, and then deliver to their customers. So they themselves do not operate warehouses, they do not bear any overhead costs, they do not bear any inventory costs, and they become cost effective as a business. We'll continue with this discussion on the advantages and disadvantages of e-businesses as compared with the offline businesses. Since the time for our today's lecture is over, so I would stop here, and inshallah we'll meet in our next lecture from the point where we are leaving. So till then, Allah Hafiz.